Hey there, legal pagers. Today we are going to be discussing an important tool for all of you business owners out there. These are independent contractor agreements. They are super important to have for a variety of reasons, and you want to make sure that any kind of hiring agreement that you have is not only protecting you and your business, but is also protecting and has rights and obligations and regulations in there regarding the people that you hire. So these types of contracts may seem scary, but I promise you that they are not. Whenever you hire a virtual assistant, a copywriter, a social media manager, you name it, if you do not have an agreement in place, you will want to send them one because these are really, really important to ensure that you guys get started on the right foot at the get-go and that they understand the things that they are signing on to when they start working for your business. So I'm going to be talking about things like confidentiality, fees, work product, and all of the things that go into independent contractor agreements in this episode. Alrighty, let's dive in, legal pagers. You're listening to the Legal Paige podcast, where we chat about life and business with a legal twist. I'm Paige, attorney and photographer helping online businesses and creatives tackle their business dreams without breaking out in hives. No more legal mumbo jumbo. This podcast features simple, bite-sized advice that'll have you legally legit in no time. Are you ready? Let's get started. As a reminder, before we get into this episode, I am legally obligated to give my disclaimer. So I am an attorney, but I am not your attorney. All legal information I talk about on this episode is intended for the masses and a large variety of different businesses. I am only your attorney when you hire me and we sign an engagement letter for me to work specifically on your legal issues. Please feel free to seek out another attorney in your hometown if you need specific legal advice or contact me for more information. Alrighty, here's the episode, friends. Okay, so you are a small business owner and you've reached the point where you can start thinking about hiring members onto your team. This is a super exciting point to reach, and it really, really helps so much in delegating, taking things off your plate so you're not, the CEO, the CLO, the COO, all of the hats. You are always wearing all of the hats. And it really allows you to grow your business because you're not working in your business so much anymore, but you're working on your business. So when you hire people, and while it is tempting sometimes to hire people that we know, friends, family members, lots of times, and I cannot begin to express how many messages I have gotten from people who have just had casual agreements for people that they have had help in their business with different tasks. Then something happens, something goes wrong, and they never had an agreement in place to begin with, like an actual written, thought out agreement, and they are not sure what to put in there, and they know that they need to get one. So if you are at that place in your business right now, this is going to be a really important episode for you. If you are thinking about bringing any type of team members on, then you need to lay out in a formal hiring agreement what their roles and responsibilities are, what they can and cannot do, how they are qualified as an independent contractor for tax purposes, you name it. So this can help save you from two big things, from spending unnecessary money. So if you don't want to provide health insurance or pay additional employment taxes or other costs that you would have to pay if you were hiring an employee on, you can make sure that they are designated as an independent contractor through an independent contractor agreement. And it's really, really important if you were to ever get audited later on in the future, or if the IRS were to come knocking at your door and looking through your taxes for, all of these contractors that you've paid money for. If you have an actual agreement in place to begin with, that they sign off that they're a contractor and you qualify them as a contractor, that is gold to have at the beginning of your working relationship together. And the IRS will definitely take note of that. And if there's any, issues or qualms related to whether they're an employee or an independent contractor. And if you want an overview of whether or not you should be using an employee agreement or an independent contractor agreement, I definitely suggest that you go back and check out episode 10 of the Legal Paige podcast, which covers all of the differences between these two types of worker relationships and agreements. We're not going to get into that here in this episode. It's purely all about the contractors that you hire. So the first thing is it's going to save you money in the long run. I can't begin to tell you how much money I have personally saved as a business owner. I have had employees and I have had contractors. And there was just a time and a place in my business where I really needed to have an in-house employee. But now I'm to the point where I only hire contractors, and it's actually amazing in terms of the flexibility that my workers have. They, of course, work on all of their own equipment and computers. They can work at night. They can work early in the morning. They can work from their couch. They can work from a coffee shop. Actually, none of them are even I take that back. Actually, I did just hire someone in my hometown, but she works from home and she is a mom of 2 little girls. And so it's a really good fit for her. And then I also have a copywriter who's a contractor. I have a legal assistant who's a contractor. She's on the East Coast. So lots of different, a social media manager as well. So I have lots of different contractors. I delegate out tasks, that fall under the Legal Paige umbrella. And so I have learned, I've looked back with, I also have a contractor who does bookkeeping. So my accountant and I constantly look at our books, and we have learned that the Legal Paige has saved a ton of money by not having to pay an employee. With all the health insurance, workers' compensation, unemployment insurance, everything that is regulated in your state regarding employees adds on additional costs for you as the business owner. So first, hiring independent contractors can save you a lot of money. Second, it can, if you make sure that you have a contractor agreement in place, it can save you from further legal issues down the road. So I talked about this a little bit earlier in this episode, but if you fail to explicitly explain in a contractor agreement that they have to file their own taxes and they are a 1099 employee, sometimes if it gets iffy down the road, and like I said, the IRS comes knocking at your door, and you have to provide proof to them that they are a contractor, whomever, the IRS is having issues with on your tax return about, you can just present them with the contractor agreement that you had in place before they started working for you. And for all of you out there who have casually hired someone and then you've decided that it's time to bring them onto your team as an actual contractor, or you're this person's been working for me for 5 to 8 months or 6 to 12 months. Who cares how long it has been? But if you don't have a contractor agreement in place, now is definitely the time to get one. It's better late than never. So an overview here about what an independent contractor agreement is. Like I said, episode 10 is where you're going to see the differences between an employee and a contractor and what they do and how they do things. But specifically in this episode, I'm just talking about what is in the actual contract, the 4 corners of the agreement that you guys are signing on to. So this is an agreement that lays out the terms for them coming on to be a worker and do some type of job in your business. So it's a hiring document. And it specifies that they are being hired for a very, very specific project or purpose. That's really important that you lay out what their duties are in the scope of work. You can say that it includes such tasks as, if you're hiring on a virtual assistant, email inbox support, social media management, Canva graphics. You just want to make sure that you also put in the terms including but not limited to. And I see this often as a mistake in a lot of contractor agreements because you want to, of course, have wiggle room as the business owner to be able to give your contractor more duties than what was specifically outlined in the contractor agreement. But for a contractor to actually be a contractor and not an employee, they do need to have like a specific role in your business. So whether that's a virtual assistant or a copywriter who should only be working on copy and captions and those type of things, opt-in copy, website copy, so on and so forth. So you want to also explain in the agreement that they are not an employee. And this is especially for tax and legal purposes. And then you're going to lay out additional terms. Like I said, the scope of work, the fees that they're getting paid. Are they getting paid biweekly? Is it just a monthly amount? Are they tracking their hours honestly and efficiently? What is their schedule? Usually with independent contractor agreements, you cannot state that they have to work between the hours of, say, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. You can't do that. That makes them look like an employee. And so you want to say in terms of the schedule in your independent contractor agreement that they are generally available Monday through Friday between the hours of 8 a.m. to, 6 p.m. or something along those lines. And that they are allowed to, take days off, take vacation time, and they just need to notify you just so you guys can make sure that all of their tasks and projects are done prior to them doing whatever they want with their schedule. They don't need to ask you to take the time off because that makes them look like an employee, of course. So you just want to be very careful with that type of language under the, work relationship part of the contract. And then the work product is really important. So it's probably a work for hire situation. And just remember with any type of copyright issues and intellectual property here, a copyright is assigned an owner at the time that it's fixed in a tangible medium. So when an independent contractor, say, puts together a graphic or puts together some type of opt-in and they fix all of your information in tangible medium, that would be owned by the contractor unless your agreement specifically assigns all copyright that they do pertaining to anything within your business to your company. That's what you want to have. Confidentiality, and then really you can add in anything else you want to include in an independent contractor agreement. You want to make sure to include clauses that are specific to your business and the projects that that contractor is working on. And this is especially important if you deal with lots of confidential client material. For all of you virtual assistants out there that are listening and trying to figure out what your independent contractor agreement should state, or if you're hiring someone that's going to be looking at your business assets, your all of those financial things, if they're looking at pricing, what your client lists are, email lists, who your clients are, how you're changing pricing and structuring packages, all of those things, you want to keep that information confidential. So you want to ensure that you have a confidentiality clause in your independent contractor agreement. And I will talk about what that includes in a second. And you also want to ensure that you probably attach a non-disclosure agreement to have this contractor sign. Now, here's the reason that I suggest you do both. First, you're double backing yourself. And second, when you actually have a contract, that's the independent contractor agreement that they are signing on to for all of their roles and responsibilities related to working for you. And then you give them just a form non-disclosure agreement. It's usually 1 to 2 pages. It's super simple. And then you can fully explain why they are signing an NDA. When people sign NDAs, they know what that means. They're not supposed to disclose any type of confidential information. You can list out very, very specific things related to the confidential information that's important that they keep secret. If they come into contact with any of that type of confidential information, when they sign an NDA, you can sit down with the contractor. Lots of times you're doing this virtually, or you can email them and you can say, this is why I'm having you sign an NDA. So I always suggest that you do both. It's a really, really good way to ensure that people aren't disseminating all your confidential information after they leave you, because contractors can leave at any time they want, and you can also let them go at any time you want. Alrighty, so we are going to get into here the clauses that you need to have in your independent contractor agreement. So at the top of your independent contractor agreement, of course, you're going to have the introductory clause that says who the agreement is between, the company and the contractor, of course, and that the person that you're bringing on board is being engaged as an independent contractor to provide X type of services for your company. And then you want to list out the scope of work. So what they are doing, how do they access the work material? Who do they report to? How long is the project for? Is it just for like a month that you're hiring the independent contractor, or does it go into perpetuity unless one party notifies of termination? That is all the stuff you want to put in the scope of work. This is like, you can do bullet points here. You don't have to make this as, legalese as the rest of the contract is probably going to be. Then right after the scope of work, I always suggest you put a fee clause. That's really important. So how much is the contractor going to be paid? How are they going to be paid? And then here you have to make sure in this clause that they send you an invoice, because they are acting independent of your business. So they are usually sole proprietors or LLCs themselves, and they send you an invoice. So I always suggest that you do this like monthly so it doesn't get out of hand. But some companies like to pay people like the 1st of the month and the 15th of the month. And so they need to send you an invoice. Just make sure that they do that. And then in the fee section, if they're getting paid a lump sum, that would be in the invoice. If they're getting paid hourly, they would track their hours. You would put that in the fee section. And then you just want to explain that they need to submit the invoice on, say, the 1st and the 15th day of each month with the total amount of hours worked, and that you will pay the independent contractor within, say, 5 business days of receipt of the invoice, via direct deposit, or if you're going to send them a check. All of that needs to be laid out in the fee section. And then the work schedule. So make sure here, the work schedule can be another clause that would usually come after the fee section. And the work schedule clause explains when they will generally be working, or how many hours are maximum that you are allowing them to clock. Make sure that you do not tell your contractor when they have to work. Like I said previously, you can't do the 8 to 12 thing. And it's a very, very important distinction here between contractors and employees, like I was talking about. And then when they need time off, or they're not going to be working, during the regularly scheduled, say, like 8 to 6 p.m., and they might need to work in the evening, that potentially you just have like a notification sentence in that clause regarding how they notify you. And especially when they decide to leave and don't want to work and have a vacation, they probably need to notify you of that at some point. They don't need to, of course, request time off at all from you and get approval. That would look like an employee, but they just need to notify you. Okay, now the next clause you want to have in your independent contractor agreement is all about work product and copyrights and who owns what that your contractor produces for your company. Do you own it as the company, or do them? The hint here is you want it to be you as the company. So you are going to lay out that, of course, anything that is considered like an actual work created, that can be anything that's fixed in a tangible medium, are going to be considered works made for hire for the company. So you are contracting around the default rule under copyright law that they own the copyright to whatever they are creating as, say, a designer or just anything that they're putting together. I can think of a million things off the top of my head right now, but I'm really, wrapped up in virtual assistant world, which is what a lot of you are starting out with when you hire team members and bring, people onto your team. So whenever they do things, you just want to make sure under a work product clause that you as the company own the copyrights to everything, all of the works that are created. The next thing that you want to have in your independent contractor agreement is a confidentiality clause. So this is a clause to protect all of the information your contractor will get when they are allowed access to everything within your company. Of course, you're going to be giving them login credentials. You're going to be giving them probably financials related to your business. And so you want to make sure that your business is not only protected with its confidential information, but of course your client's private information is protected as well. And then you just want to double up on this. So have the confidentiality clause in your agreement, but then have them also sign an NDA. And remember that it is an acronym for non-disclosure agreement. Okay, the next clause is work relationship. This is all about specifically spelling out that they are a contractor, and there is no way around the fact that they are contracting to do work with your company. So no previous or subsequent dealings should be interpreted as establishing or attempting to establish an employer-employee relationship. That clause is really, really, really important. And then you just want to have something regarding that you withhold no taxes for the contractor. You'll provide a 1099 miscellaneous form at the end of the year if they are paid over $600, and that they are responsible for their own self-employment taxes. The next little clause that I often see forgotten in independent contractor agreements is an expenses clause. So who is responsible for additional expenses or travel if, the contractor needs to travel for a very specific work engagement related specifically and only to your company. If it's sort of tangentially related to your company, then the independent contractor likely needs to pay for all of those expenses, and they can deduct them on their own tax return. Usually they're not entitled to reimbursement for any expenses except those that have been previously approved by your company. That's likely what you want to state under this expense clause. And then if you require travel by them specifically for your business, that you'll reimburse them perhaps for all related travel expenses. But you can, of course, decide what you want to do with expenses. You either pay for it, you don't pay for it. You can leave that to determination at a later time. That needs to be in your expenses clause. The next clause is an agreement. Duration and termination. So how long does the agreement last? Is it, a 2-month contract? Is it a 6-month contract? Is it a year-long contract? Or is it month to month? Does it go into perpetuity until somebody terminates? When does it terminate? And then what happens after termination occurs? So do you have to sign another agreement or not? Or does it, if this is like a year-long agreement and then it moves to month, you need to explain that in the duration and termination clause. And then there's 2 more clauses that you really, really want to ensure in your independent contractor agreement. This is a non-solicitation clause and a non-disparagement clause. So you cannot have a non-compete clause in your independent contractor agreement. That's a big no-no. They should be allowed to work elsewhere, have other jobs. You cannot have a non-compete clause. That means they're an employee. Just really, I know that I'm probably going to get some pushback from this, but for all intensive purposes, I am going to, of course, give you my legal best suggestion. Make sure you don't have a non-compete in there. It's just bad news bears. Make sure, though, that instead you put a non-solicitation clause in. So this lays out that your contractor is not allowed to contact any of your current clients for a certain period of time after termination of them working for you. And of course, during the part of you two working together. So during and then a certain time period after. And this protects you from the contractor becoming a competitor for your business. And the language here is going to be something along the lines of they shall not solicit or contact any established client or customer, and that they cannot request or advise any of your client or customers to withdraw business from you or cancel business with you and go with somebody else. That's all going to be in a non-solicitation clause. I often see that left out from contractor agreements, and I highly suggest you put it in. And then the final one is a non-disparagement clause. So this is just very, very straightforward. You don't want either party to disparage the other. So that it keeps your contractor from speaking badly about you. Usually you're going to put a time period on this as well. So at all times during this agreement and for, in perpetuity thereafter, or you can say for 5 years thereafter or whatever. Lots of people that hire on contractors, sometimes they're family members, sometimes they're industry friends. You just don't want them spreading anything about how you run your business, your management style. pricing, anything related to your business. Of course, they can't disclose that from a NDA confidentiality perspective, but you also just don't want them like saying things badly about your business or how you run your business. So that falls under a non-disparagement clause. Those are the main big clauses that pertain specifically to a contractor agreement. Of course, you're going to have the miscellaneous clauses like entire agreement clause, venue and jurisdiction, arbitration, transfer, severability, counterparts or facsimile signature clause. That's for electronic documents, representation and warranties. You want to make sure that the contractor represents and warrants that, it's their responsibility to work remotely, use their own equipment, track their hours efficiently and honestly, that there is no other contract that impedes them from working for you, a force majeure clause, indemnification clause. Those are all just the miscellaneous clauses that you probably have in every other contract that you have under your business as well. But that all of those combined with these very specific clauses that I just talked about make up the whole of your independent contractor agreement that you're going to send out to people when you start delegating tasks as a business owner and hiring people onto your team. So I hope that all of this was super helpful and enlightening to you. If you are ever looking for a very specific independent contractor agreement, I of course have one in the Legal Paige contract shop. That is at www.thelegalpageshop.com. And you can find it under the entrepreneur tab. You can find it in all kinds of the different tabs that we have related to specific businesses that go onto our site. We try to make sure that you can easily find things and navigate through the shop. But just so you guys know, a basic independent contractor agreement is likely what you are looking for if you go to the Legal Paige shop. I'm also going to link all of this in the show notes for you. So if you just go to thelegalpage.com/episode 42, you can find a link to a very, very specific independent contractor agreement that I would suggest that you get if you are tuning in today and you think that that is something that you need right now at the start of 2020. So you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any further questions regarding independent contractor relationships or agreements or somebody that you've hired on, if you think that they need a different type of contract to work for you, please head over to the Legal Paige community on Facebook. Me and my team are in there often and we can answer your questions. And then of course you can find me at the Legal Paige on Instagram. I'm in DMs all the time and we can chat there as well. Thank you all again. I really appreciate your time and I will see you here again for you listening in, same time, same place next week. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Legal Paige podcast. See, I told you being legally legit isn't so scary. Be sure to visit thelegalpage.com for all show notes. And it would be super awesome if you could head over to iTunes and leave a review. Last but not least, don't forget to join my free Facebook group for unlimited legal and biz Q&A. Chat soon, Legal Pagers.